Between 1910 and 1925, independence movements took shape in Spanish America. After centuries of being an integral part of the Spanish Empire, the countries we know today were formed. Correction, not all. Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic remained for several more decades without achieving their independence. Have you ever wondered why? Heroes like San Martin and Bolívar fought for emancipation even in other territories like Peru and Bolivia, but they completely ignored expelling the Spanish from the three mentioned islands. Are you interested? Alright, then stay until the end of the video. As Jack the Ripper says, let's take it step by step, since the three main countries in this video were during the Spanish era, three captaincies general that, although they were under the jurisdiction of the Viceroyalty of New Spain, were independent from each other. Let's start with the largest island, Cuba, whose economic value was of great importance to Spain due to its sugarcane and tobacco plantations. During the Wars of Independence, Cuba became the main royalist stronghold in the Caribbean. Large garrisons and ships of the Spanish Navy were sent to supply and fortify Havana and Santiago. As for the Cubans themselves, there were indeed some attempts. One of the most representative was the conspiracy of Aponte, a freed slave who started a rebellious abolitionist movement that was suppressed by Spain. Some pro-independence organizations were also formed, such as Soles y Rayos de Bolívar, from Masonic circles like Simón himself, who foresaw an uprising with Aponte, about 3,000 men from Venezuela. Up to that point, they had a name in mind for the country, the Republic of Cubanacan, something that never happened, because the organization was discovered in 1823 and the rebellion was suppressed. In response to such warnings, King Fernando VII, who had restored absolutism, issued the Royal Order of 1825, where censorship and police activity in Cuba were reinforced to prevent new conspiracies. It's important to highlight that not all Cubans of that time wanted independence. There was a sugar-producing, slave-owning elite that remained loyal to Spain as they feared a second one, Haiti. And how did Haiti end up? Well, believe me, you wouldn't have wanted to be French. If we talk about Cuba's independence itself, it was forged after three wars that began several decades later. The first, the 10 Years' War, which ended with the defeat of the insurgents and the death of their leader. The Little War, which actually wasn't so little and lasted more than a year. And the War of Independence of 1895, which lasted for 3 years? What does that sound like to you? Yes, to the disaster of '98, in which the United States intervened against Spain, after the sinking of the battleship Maine, widely considered a false flag attack. Yankees being Yankees? The point is that it was only thanks to the intervention of a major power and not other Hispanic countries. 8 decades after the continental independences, that's when Cuba achieved its independence, supposedly. During the Spanish era, Puerto Rico had great geostrategic value. It was the guard of the Atlantic route to the Caribbean, a stopover between Europe and the mainland, and an advanced shield for Cuba. From San Juan, rival fleets were monitored and harassed, and convoys between Veracruz and Havana were protected. Likewise, it also had large plantations of sugar, coffee, and tobacco, although to a lesser extent than Cuba. For that reason, San Juan was also a heavily fortified stronghold. In 1815, during the height of the Wars of Independence, the Royal Decree of Graces was issued. With it, Spanish and European immigration to Cuba and Puerto Rico was encouraged. Only that in the latter, it was more significant, since immigration to the small island was proportionally much greater, which discouraged independence movements. In 1823, Captain General Miguel de la Torre tightened control over the local population. However, there were also independence conspiracies in Borinquen. The role of Antonio Valero de Bernabé, a Puerto Rican and Bolívar's general, stands out as he advocated for the liberation of his island. And he mentioned it at the Congress of Panama. I'll tell you more about it in a bit. Without much success, as you can imagine. As you know, Puerto Rico's fate was similar to Cuba's. Spain maintained sovereignty for decades, and there were some attempts at independence. The most famous was El Grito de Lares in 1868, in which an independent republic was proclaimed. But the uprising was suppressed shortly after. A year before the war with the United States, there was also the Yoko attempt, which was thwarted by the Civil Guard. By 1898, Puerto Rico was also part of the Spanish-American War, although once again to a much lesser extent than Cuba. The reason was that it was a smaller territory with a smaller population, making it easier to control. As a result, after the Spanish defeat, Puerto Rico was handed over to the United States, a country that has held sovereignty over Borinquen to this day. Independence, 51st state, or remain a free associated state? Only time will tell. The history of the Dominican Republic during the independence period was truly unique. To begin with, we can sum up their relationship with Spain during this period with this meme. Yes, Santo Domingo was a territory with little economic and strategic value, and it was going through a demographic and productive crisis. For that reason, in 1795, they had no problem ceding it to France after a war. The problem is that shortly after, Haiti gained its independence in a peaceful and loving way. Understand the sarcasm. The Haitian leaders then intervene in the eastern colony. And once again, we can use this meme to describe the attention that France gave since they were busy with the Napoleonic Wars. Finally, the same Dominican royalists, led by Juan Sanchez Ramirez, managed to expel the French and evade the Haitians. In 1809, beginning a period known as the Foolish Spain. This name is due to the fact that once again Spain showed a total lack of interest in poor Santo Domingo. This increased local autonomy, thus motivating the independence that was proclaimed on December 1, 1821. If Spain doesn't pay attention to me, should we then seek protection in the Bolivarian project? So is the independent state of Spanish Haiti born then? With this flag, whose resemblance to Venezuela's is no coincidence. This country proclaimed itself as the sister republic of Gran Colombia to seek its protection. The problem is that once again we can use this meme that Bolívar was busy with his campaign in Peru, and besides, he didn't want to get into conflicts with Haiti, the country that received him during one of his exiles. Jean-Pierre Boyer crossed east and occupied Santo Domingo just over a month after Spanish Haiti declared independence. Partly also because some local groups supported the end of slavery that Haiti offered, which was done more to prevent the return of Europeans than out of goodwill. The island then remained unified until 1844 when the Dominicans rose up against Haitian rule. That is to say, they achieved independence themselves, and once again, without any intervention from continental Spanish America. Now then, let's answer one of the questions from the video. Why did the Founding Fathers' so-called fight for freedom affect Peru and Bolivia's independence? But he completely ignored the Spanish island territories, even though they asked him for help. First, because Peru is key. In other words, did Peru hold all the royalist legitimacy, being Spain's main stronghold in South America? As for Bolivia, the Potosi mines were worth more than the tobacco plantations. I assure you of that. Besides, The idea was to expel all the royalists from the continent and thus feel safer in case of a possible land invasion from Peru and Upper Peru. Likewise, Gran Colombia, which had direct access to the Caribbean, had been worn out by its wars in Peru and Bolivia. And was it more in debt to England than Peliteñida?
I didn't pay my credit card and they canceled it completely. Poverty is breathing down my neck. Mars.
Cuba and Puerto Rico were ultra-fortified strongholds with a large fleet, and the patriotic military investments had been made, above all, in the land army. So the great Colombian fleet wouldn't have stood a chance. Diplomatic reasons were also involved. The United Kingdom and the United States, key trading partners after independence, were reluctant to support a Caribbean war that could disrupt the Atlantic balance and the slave system. Bolívar couldn't afford to jeopardize those relationships? Was something similar happening in Santo Domingo with Haiti? What did exist were privateers and private expeditions from patriot ports that harassed Spanish traffic in the Caribbean. In fact, at the Congress of Panama in 1826, where an attempt was made to bring the newly formed Hispanic American countries closer together, the issue of support for the island territories was discussed, to which the invited British observer, abro comillas, suggested not to intervene. Do you understand me? So, as you can see, it's more than just hypocrisy, as some people think. The non-intervention of Bolívar and other heroes in insular Spain happened due to military exhaustion, naval incapacity, opposition from key powers, and diplomatic calculation. Anyway, the independence of these countries happened naturally. Well, not all of them, but it does show that we share different destinies. What other reason do you think there was for Spain to stay longer in its Caribbean territories? Don't forget to leave your comment and subscribe to the channel. Also, I'll leave my social media links in the description in case you want to watch the new videos in advance and have more interaction with me. Your donations on Patreon, Una Manito Net, or channel memberships are welcome. See you next time.